Hello and welcome to another edition of Currently in Quincy. I'm Joe Catalano. Today, Kelly Eisner from the American Red Cross is here with an update for us. First, though, we take a look at the weather and the news for you. Currently in Quincy, it's overcast, might be a few sprinkles around 40 degrees right now, and the temperatures won't budge much, and neither will the clouds today. The clouds will win out. We'll have some off and on showers through the midday hours, and then just cloudy for the rest of the day with temperatures right around 40 degrees. For this evening, things will start to clear out. Lows will drop off to around 30, and not a bad weekend coming up. I think a little bit of sunshine tomorrow with highs into the mid-30s. Much more sunshine around on Sunday, with a high in the upper 30s, and still plenty of sunshine for Monday. The high Monday again in the mid to perhaps upper 30s. Most of next week actually looks sunny and rather cool, but right now cloudy with spot showers and 40 degrees here in Quincy. Checking out the news for you today, the job of head football coach at Quincy High School remains open after Quincy High School principal Keith Ford stepped down as acting coach earlier this week. Ford stepped down from the position on Tuesday after being named acting coach just last Friday when Vernon Crawford resigned as coach after only one season. Ford said that he had accepted the interim position to maintain consistency for the team, but also said he did not want to be a distraction after some community members raised concerns about the hiring process. Quincy Mayor Thomas Koch says the new coach will be hired by the superintendent and his team.
There is a process by which, for the most part, we follow anyway, so I would have been surprised that the superintendent bypassed the process completely, But usually there's a committee formed, and, parents of children have a voice, and then there's a process where people apply and decisions are made. So we'll see what happens, how it plays out. That's definitely the decision of the superintendent and the principal of a school under ed reform many years ago, Joe. The only hiring the school committee does now is the superintendent. We confirm that the assistant superintendent, and technically we hire the nurses. Why that's the case, I don't know. But at any rate, all that hiring was taken away from the school committee many years ago when the state passed ed reform. So, I've heard from some folks and told them to let their voices be heard to the superintendent and the principal.
So the head coaching position at Quincy High School was publicly posted back on Tuesday with an application deadline of February 14th. State officials recently visited the Southwest Middle School here in Quincy to see how the building is functioning almost 5 years after its completion. Members of the Massachusetts School Building Authority viewed the school's systems, facilities, students and teachers. Information on HVAC, security, traffic flow, and technology were all gathered. They'll be used on school building projects across the state. Southwest was Quincy's third major school project to qualify for MSBA funding, following Quincy High School back in 2010 and the Central Middle School in 2014. Plans for a new Squantum School have also been accepted into the MSBA program. That project is expected to qualify for at least 50% state reimbursement. There's been a promotion on the Quincy Fire Department this week. Gerard Murphy was promoted to a lieutenant during the ceremony that was held in the Great Hall at Quincy City Hall back on Monday. Mayor Thomas Koch, Fire Chief Joe Jackson, and members of Murphy's family all joined his colleagues during that ceremony. The oath of office was administered by Assistant City Clerk Joe Newton. Well, funeral arrangements have been announced for a longtime active Quincy resident. Harold Crowley of Germantown died this past Sunday at the age of 87. Crowley was a Quincy Public Schools teacher for 34 years, having taught at Broadmeadows Middle School and Snug Harbor School before retiring in 1994. State Representative Tacky Chan of Quincy has fond memories of Crowley, both as a teacher and a community leader.
I met Harold through Kids Vote. When I worked in Michael Morris's office, he brought me along to learn about kids voting, which was a project to encourage kids to vote, learn about candidates, learn about political process at different educational levels, and also try and get the parents to participate on voting day, which actually was very successful. And unfortunately, this program did not survive. Definitely, Harold was one that made it work. But big union person, teachers union in particular, very supportive unions, very supportive of education to have more flexibility and understanding than just teaching to a test. Very well read, very well educated. Northeastern, when those co-op, when you could just school and work. Was in the military. But most importantly, he was one of those guys that always taught me how things got done at the community level, and taught me some fun political races and some friendly and unfriendly situations in the city regarding trying to get some stuff done. Very passionate about the Thomas Crane Library.
Crowley was also active with the Quincy Historical Society and other historical societies in the region, did serve on the Quincy Conservation Commission, founded the Friends of the Thomas Crane Public Library and their bookstore, was also active in Quincy Scouting, and started kids voting here in Quincy, teaching young people about elections. Crowley graduated Northeastern University and served 2 years in the U.S. Army. The visiting hours are today from 4 to 7 at the Cohane Funeral Home. There'll be a 10 a.m. service tomorrow at the funeral home and a burial with military honors at Mount Wollaston Cemetery. It's our check of news for you today. Coming up, we sit down with Kelly Eisner of the American Red Cross for an update. That's next. Welcome back. We're really pleased to welcome back to the program Kelly Eisner from the American Red Cross to get an update on how things are going and what's coming up for 2024. Great to see you, Kelly.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to come in.
We love having you here for sure, and we love obviously promoting the cause of the Red Cross, which is more crucial now than ever, right?
Absolutely. I feel like whenever we talk, I'm talking about blood shortages, but unfortunately that is the situation that we are finding ourselves in again. We saw right before the holidays, there was a decline in the number of donations that were collected. In itself, that is expected.
Right.
Even when we know it's going to happen, it's not always possible to prepare to over-collect because blood just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. It's a perishable item, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. You can't, do all your grocery shopping in September and be good for the year.
So how bad was the holidays?
We saw the week before Christmas, we saw a decline of about 7,000, and then the week between Christmas and New Year's, about the same. It was between 7,000 and 8,000, which really, the problem is that sounds like a small number when you're talking about a nationwide collection, but unfortunately, the number of people who are regularly giving blood is at the lowest level it's been in 20 years.
Really?
It's, and it's not, I don't want to sound ungrateful. The donors who come out regularly are amazing and they are passionate and dedicated. There's just not enough of them right now.
So when you're 7 or 8, that's donors?
That's
7,000 donors,
units of blood.
Units of blood.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we saw that drop. We also at the same time saw an increased demand from hospitals. So that got us to the first of the year. We went out in full force. You probably got some phone calls, some emails, hoping to recover that. And donors always do respond. But then we saw a series of winter storms across the country that, every area that the Red Cross collects blood has had blood drive cancellations because of bad weather. So, when you're already trying to just claw your way back up to a supply level that you're comfortable with, it really takes its toll.
Yeah, we actually have a map graphic to kind of demonstrate that.
Yes.
And explain what we're looking at here. Yeah.
And thank you so much for using this, because I think that really just goes to show you those areas that are in red are all areas where the Red Cross collects blood. And all of those are how many, like the darker the red color, the more blood drives that have been canceled in those areas. Thankfully, Massachusetts has been on the lower end of that. I shouldn't say we were spared because we had some tough weather, but compared to other parts of the country.
Right.
But when you see something like that happening all across the state, all across the country, you can't, it's hard to describe. We can't just go extra hard on collections in Massachusetts and be able to supply the whole country.
Right.
We're all just seeing that same impact, and that's how we've gotten to where we are.
Because the donations that you collect, say in Massachusetts, stay like in the Northeast region for the most part, right?
For the most part,
Yeah.
we have the capability to send blood wherever it's
Sure,
needed,
yeah.
but we do tend to meet local needs first, just because it's easier. If blood is needed in Quincy, it'll
Yep.
go to Quincy as opposed to go into North Dakota. But again, the Red Cross being a national supplier, we
Yes.
do have that ability. So if we were only seeing bad weather in like Oregon, the rest of the country could step it up and send it out there. But unfortunately, we're seeing this pattern across the
Yeah,
country.
there were sections in the Midwest, the Southeast that were impacted as well. So the areas that were shown there in gray, you do not collect in those states?
We either don't collect at all, or it's a very small percentage of what
okay.
hospitals need. Areas like Florida, the Red Cross is the biggest and the well-known.
40%, right, of the
40%.
nation's blood supply.
Yes, yes. So I'm flattered.
I've learned a few things over the years talking to you. That's huge.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But there are other nonprofits that do collect
Yeah.
blood to a lesser extent. So in Florida, their hospital needs can be met by the collectors in Florida, for example.
I
So
see.
that's
Okay.
the Red Cross tries to go to the areas where it's a little bit harder to collect, or just there's more demand.
Yeah. So what's happened over the past 20 years, Kelly, that the donations have declined so much? I mean, I'm sure it's a number of factors, right? It's not one single thing.
It is.
Yeah.
One thing that we can point to, obviously, COVID-19 changed
course.
everything about every aspect of life, and it sort of accelerated what we were seeing anyway. I was just reading that we saw 260,000 donors between the ages of 18 and 24 in 2021, which is about, I believe it was 40% less than we had seen prior to the start of the pandemic. So, one of the impacts of COVID is that it's changed the way all of us work, go to school, where we do those things. So, whereas prior to the pandemic, we might be running blood drives every day in the big office buildings downtown. We still run those, but there aren't
There's
as many
nobody there,
people.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
If we don't hit it that one day that everyone's in person, then
Right.
and the Red Cross certainly is looking at ways to address that, getting out into communities more, churches, civic organizations. I always like to talk about the Sons of Italy
Yes.
because they're such a good sponsor. Trying to move our operations into communities more where people are, but it's a slow process sometimes, and in the meantime, we're seeing this just general change.
So you mentioned Sons of Italy. Last Monday of the month, they're in Quincy, right?
Yes, and generally on that cycle, which
Yeah.
I love that because it helps donors get used to the fact that, okay, it's coming up, it's there.
Right.
They can make their appointments in advance.
Yeah.
1-800-RED CROSS to call, or redcrossblood.org.
Sure. So do you need to maybe be more in smaller communities, neighborhoods perhaps, where folks are
Absolutely.
staying home and working from home, that might be more inclined to, I don't know, walk down to the general store, if you will, or something like
I
that.
think that's a great idea, and we're always looking for businesses that have, the requirements, the space requirements are sometimes
Yes.
bigger than people think,
Yes.
but at the same time, we'd be happy to talk that through with
Yeah.
you. So if you know of a community space that is interested in hosting a blood drive, please do reach out
Okay.
and give us a call.
All right.
In this area, you can talk to Janice.
Talk to Janice, okay. But I know like community groups like here in Quincy we have like, I don't know, the HouseNet Community Center perhaps. Or
Yes.
Germantown Neighborhood Center. So areas like that can do their own drives, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even the library is a great
okay,
source.
sure.
We do a lot of libraries around Massachusetts
Okay.
as well. The other thing too is even if a civic organization can't physically host a
Mm-hmm.
blood drive, even just setting up a day like, we're all gonna send our members to this particular blood
Okay,
drive and making
all right.
appointments. Those are some things that people
Teams,
can
right?
help. Teams, exactly.
Yeah,
Make
yeah.
it it's a great team building activity.
Sure.
I also, we've really started to think about how we get our message across. And one of the things, seeing that drop in young donors, they're the future of the Red Cross. As our entire population ages, we always need young people to kind of come in and pick up the reins. So I would argue that a sports team, maybe the new high school football coach would be interested in doing a team building event.
Okay. All right.
come
'Cause
into
how
the
old do you
Red
have to
Cross.
be actually to donate?
if you have your parents' permission, you can be 16,
Okay.
17 otherwise. But we really, it's that 18 to 24 range.
Yep.
That's where we've noticed that habits are built. College
Yes.
students especially.
I was going to say college campuses, perhaps.
Exactly.
Okay.
Any chance for people in that range, because it sets your mind to like, oh, this is something I can do. It's not as big a deal as I thought,
Right.
and just sort of build that lifetime habit.
Yeah, interesting. Get your card. Do you still give out cards? Donor cards?
We have digital cards.
Oh, digital
so we have
cards,
an
yeah,
app,
of course.
which
I'm showing my age here.
Me too. I'm
Okay.
right there with you.
Would you go to, say, like a large employer? So I'm thinking like Gillette or State Street here in Quincy.
Yes,
Okay.
and we're so grateful. Both of those companies do support
do?
the Red
Oh,
Cross.
okay.
Blood donations with volunteer hours, with financial donations. We are very blessed in Massachusetts that we have so many strong corporate partners. Not that we're always not looking for more.
Sure, yeah.
But it's great, and again, like having sort of someone, just having a champion inside some of these places to say, hey, you know what? Let's go give blood together.
Yeah.
Be my blood buddy today.
Yeah. I always like to ask you to talk through the actual process of donating blood.
Sure.
Just for folks who may not have or haven't done it in a while, if there's any changes at all.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So start to finish, it takes about an hour.
Okay.
You come, you check in. That's where you'll show your digital donor card if you have that. If not, driver's license is fine.
Okay.
We always need some kind of form of ID. The next step is the health history. So that's where you'll talk about any medications you might be taking, cold, flu symptoms, things like that. We do ask that if you're getting the sniffles, maybe wait a week before
course.
you come
Yeah.
back in.
Common sense, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And no one wants to leave the house when they're feeling all not quite
Right.
there.
Yeah.
Then the actual donation part
Mm-hmm.
takes about 15 minutes when you're on the bed, arm out.
Yep, yep.
And then from there, the best part is you go into the canteen, you get your Oreos or chocolate chip cookies, little apple juice,
Okay.
raisins
Sure.
for, all the parents out there. You can give your kids raisins.
Okay. So about an hour.
About an hour start to finish.
Appointments, yes?
We encourage
Ideally,
appointments,
yeah.
and it's as much for you as for us, because then we know when people are coming, we're not going to see a surge of suddenly everyone wants to donate exactly at 12 o'clock.
Gotcha.
It helps us plan.
Sure. Do you need volunteers at those
We
donor
do.
centers? You do. Okay.
We have a position called a blood donor ambassador, which they're amazing people, because these are the people that when you walk in, if you're feeling a little nervous
Mm-hmm.
or like worried you're late, they greet you with this big smile. And it's a great way to interact with your community too. I mean, we talk about,
Yeah.
these blood drives in your neighborhoods.
Yep.
This is a great way to see your neighbors in a different sense.
Yeah, it's true. It's kind of like going to the polls to vote, or
Exactly.
I don't know, stopping by the transfer station on Saturday morning.
Yes. The mall, we call that.
Yeah, right, the mall, yes. But it's a community building experience, and you get to meet people you might not otherwise have met, right?
It's true, and and you find commonalities too. I think these days we're all sort of just struggling for some of that commonality.
Yeah.
Nothing like giving blood to really just bring us all together.
How often can you donate, Kelly?
Every 56 days. If
Okay.
if we're talking about just a regular whole blood
Regular whole blood,
donation,
yeah.
that's every 56 days. There
Okay.
are other types of donations, like if you give platelets.
Yes.
And platelets are incredibly needed at all times.
Okay.
Platelets you can give every 7 days, up to 24 times a year.
Wow, okay. You were at the State House this week.
was,
Yeah.
yes.
What was going on up there?
We are, February is Black History Month, and part of what the Red Cross works on in that space is we have a sickle cell initiative. When we're talking about things like a blood shortage, just like everything in life, it doesn't hit everyone equally. Patients who have sickle cell disease, and unfortunately they are overwhelmingly African American or of African descent, sometimes a patient can use up to 100 units of blood every single year to prevent these pain crises. So if you're not familiar, sickle cell, like normal blood cells are shaped like this.
Okay.
Sickled blood cells are kind of like this.
I see.
They turn into a half moon shape and have really sharp edges. So when every blood cell in your body is doing that, it's like glass going through your veins. It's
gosh.
incredibly painful. And there's risk of lots of long-term damage as well, organ damage, vision impairments, fertility issues, the list goes on. It's an incredibly debilitating condition, and it's something that's just not, there hasn't been enough discussion
No, you're
about
right,
sickle
yeah.
cell in the public space. So that's what we were trying to solve at the State House. We were invited by the Massachusetts Black and Latino Legislative Caucus.
I see, okay.
Just to kind
shed
of
some
get the
light on
word
that.
out there
Yeah.
that blood donations really can help communities of color
Yeah. Is there something that can happen at the state level to encourage that? I mean, was what was
There,
talked
so
about?
part of what we were doing there was to show our support. We weren't there by ourselves. The Red Cross never works alone. We were there with the Massachusetts Sickle Cell Association, and they've been sponsoring or pushing legislation that would help bring more wraparound services to patients with sickle cell disease as well. It's, when you're, it's hard to describe. I've learned so much about this talking to our sickle cell warriors. For example, if there's a sudden change in the weather, if it's 40 degrees one day and 20 the next
Never
day.
happens around here.
No, nope, we are Mediterranean climate here.
Right.
But that change, that sudden change, is enough to trigger a pain crisis. And then
Really?
what happens? You wake up in the morning and, with no warning, you're just in this incredible pain. One of the warriors that's gotten to be a dear friend talks about she's given birth twice, once natural, once by cesarean, and she would rather go through both of those again than go through another sickle cell pain
That
crisis.
puts it in perspective. Okay.
It really does.
Yeah.
I've had a C-section and I don't ever want to have one again.
Okay. So it's incredibly painful. It's chronic, right? There's no
It's
cure.
chronic,
right?
exactly. It's
Yeah.
a genetic condition.
Yeah.
But one thing that can help, so blood transfusions are the best treatment for that immediate pain crisis. There are medications,
Yeah.
a lot of them are expensive or just not widely available, but blood transfusions can help sickle cell patients in crisis. Something else that really can help is just education, and that's, again, why we're out there just spreading the word about this condition. Right now, there's about 4% of our donor base in all is African American. We'd like to see that number go up. It has to, blood doesn't have a race. Race is a social construct, but blood does have genetic markers.
Yes.
And the more blood transfusions you need over time, the more close that match has to be. So,
Oh, I didn't realize that.
yeah,
Okay.
I didn't either. I've been taught by a lot of really brilliant people
Yeah.
to help me understand it so that I can come on and try not to sound dumb.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because that's news to me and probably to a lot of folks too.
It has to do with the antigens that come on your blood. So I think everybody learned a little bit more about antibodies and antigens during COVID.
That's for sure. Yeah.
So the more times you need blood, every time you have a blood transfusion, you get extra markers on it, so it just has to be that much closer a match. So someone who is of African genetic descent is going to have their best match from someone else who's of African genetic descent.
Interesting.
And the
Okay.
same, Mediterranean to Mediterranean, and northern England to northern England, that kind of thing.
Okay, because I've learned that O positive is the kind of the generic, right, for everybody.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, type O is the most common, especially in the U.S. With our makeup.
see.
Most people are some form of O. O positive, O negative are always in demand,
Okay.
and actually, right now, those are one of the blood types that are being restricted to hospitals. It doesn't mean they can't get them. It just means that the need has to be there. They can't sort of build that supply because
see.
we have to not ration. Ration is too strong of a word, but we have to be very careful that we're managing the supply carefully.
Yes, okay. Does the Red Cross, I mean, when it's forecast to be a disaster in a certain part of the country, do you take some preemptive steps to donate, ship blood to that section before it's needed?
We do. That's
Yeah.
a great question. A lot of times we are able to pre-position blood supplies if we see a big storm coming that is going to be very localized. And then sometimes these storms, that's with what we would call a notice event, like the thing
Oh,
that you
okay.
see on the forecast.
Yes.
Sometimes they take everybody by surprise,
Sure.
and we're not able to do that,
Yeah.
which is why it's so important that if you're in an unimpacted area, you get out and make those donations. It really can help the rest of the
absolutely.
country.
Then you have the unnoticed, like earthquakes and
Yep.
floods, perhaps, or devastating fire, perhaps we saw on the West Coast. So those are
And-
other issues you can't predict. Yeah.
And it's true, and about the only prediction that's safe to make right now is that those are going to continue to increase. We
Exactly.
saw in 2023, we saw 28 billion plus dollar disasters
Wow.
around the country. In Massachusetts, there were 4 last year. They're increasing,
Yes.
and our climate crisis is a thing that the Red Cross on the front lines of all humanitarian situations sees that every day.
Yeah. Only got about a minute left, Kelly. Anything else you'd like to let folks know what's coming up this year?
We're always looking for volunteers in addition to blood donors.
Okay.
I always kind of put that plug out that no matter what your interests are, you can find something with the Red Cross. I mentioned climate crisis. If that's a passion of yours, come see us. We're trying to do a lot of proactive work in that space.
Okay.
Always looking for blood donors. RedCrossBlood.org for blood donations, or just redcross.org for everything else.
Okay, and your app, I know, is very popular
Yes,
as well.
our blood donor app, I swear by it. That's how I make my appointments. It comes, you've got your donor card right there, a little
Yes.
scan, and also it gives you a little mini health history. So when you go to your doctor, bring it for your
Okay.
regular checkup.
Thanks for coming by. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
Very welcome. Check the forecast for you for the rest of the day today. Kind of what you see is what you get out there. A lot of clouds, maybe a sprinkle or maybe even a flurry passing by tonight. Temperatures today in the lower 40s down to about 30 this evening. Finally, a little bit of sunshine tomorrow through the clouds with highs into the mid-30s. Better on Sunday with more sunshine, upper 30s, and still pretty nice on Monday with plenty of sunshine and temperatures in the mid-30s. Thanks again to Kelly Eisner for joining us. Thanks to our crew, and thank you for watching. Speaking of Monday, here on the program, Philip Chong from Quincy Asian Resources will join us because the Lunar New Year celebration is coming up later this month. Meantime, check out our website. It's qatv.org. All of our latest programs are there. There's news and information, video on demand, live streaming, and much more. For all of us here at QATV, I'm Joe Catalano. Have a great weekend. Good job.